Hi everyone, welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. I'm Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by our co-host, Dr. Susan Nash. Hi, how are you, Susan?
I'm great. I'm really thrilled that we have Don Burdick with us. He's a great success story. Everybody will love listening to how he took a company from an idea to selling it for almost $1 billion.
Wow, that's a good one. All right, here we go. And we are back. And we've got Don with us right now.
Hey guys.
Well, I'll just jump in. Yeah, hi. I'm going to jump in and give him a quick little intro because I think everybody, he's too modest to talk about this himself. But a few years ago, he started up a company called Panther II, and they had an idea for oil and gas in the Midland Basin. And then it went from that to... he sold it for almost $1 billion, and now he has another company, Olifant. But it's fantastic to hear Don's story, and I would just like to welcome him and say that we're really thrilled to have you here.
Well, it's a pleasure to join you. Yeah, let's have a fun conversation, and if anything I say today has any value to the listeners, then all the better. It's just one guy's story in the oil patch, and happy to share it with everybody.
Great. Well, how did you get started as a geologist?
Sure. That was, as a young guy, I grew up watching those Jacques Cousteau specials, and always wanted to go scuba diving, and thought that I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then when I got to college, I looked at the curriculum and realized, I'm going to be taking the same courses that all the pre-med guys are taking. And I didn't really want to go through that grinder. So I stumbled on an intro geology course, discovered you can do a lot of the things that I thought I would do as a marine biologist. And one thing led to another. I stayed with the degree and majored in the science. And it's been a blast ever since.
That's great. What was your first job?
First job?
Yes, your first job.
First job, yes. So after grad school, I got hired by Marathon Oil Company, and Marathon was one of the mid-majors at the time, and I got an opportunity to go to Midland, Texas. Now, I'm a kid who grew up in North Carolina, so I was used to trees and water and rolling hills, and when I showed up in Midland, Texas, it was flat and dry and remote, and I thought, if this isn't the end of the world, I bet I can find it from here. That said, and stepping into the oil patch where I had no family, no friends, no knowledge really of how this whole game worked. But I'm so grateful that I was able to get into the oil patch. And Midland, Texas, which is kind of ground zero for the oil patch, once again today, even when I was starting back in 30, gosh, how long has it been? 36 years ago. It was a hotbed then, and I made some great friends, learned some great skills, grew to really appreciate the people that are in this oil patch, and it's just been a wonderful career and a wonderful ride ever since.
Well, I know that Rick always talks about the importance of education and also just initiative. And I was wondering, Rick, do you have any thoughts? Because I'm interested in your question since you're not from the oil business.
No,
right.
I find it really interesting. We were talking a little bit pre-show about, how Bob got into, Don got into this in terms of a career and how diverse that career is in so many different ways. And Don, when you went from that first job to starting your own company, at what point did you feel, I'm going to start my own company, I want to do something different?
Yeah, and that's a gret question, because it was not part of my early objective by any means. In fact, if I look at my career, I would describe it as one of being opportunistic. I'm not a guy that had this concrete plan of how I'm going to conquer the world by the age of 35 or whatever it is. It was, frankly, many steps of, I would say, gratitude. I was grateful to get hired in 1984 when a lot of people, the oil bust was beginning. I was grateful to survive a layoff a year and a half into my professional career. And so each opportunity that I had, so as a young guy, I did a lot of exploration geology. In fact, my career at Marathon, those first 10 years, was learning and kind of testing my skill set and testing my ability and growing my skill set, I would say, to the point that one day a new opportunity presented itself 10 years into the career, and it was one that scared me. I talked about this before. I came to a fork in the road, and there was the safe path and there was the scary path. And I decided to take the scary path to hopefully grow and get better. And I guess that's sort of been a consistent theme. And the latest scary path I've taken is one that made me CEO of a startup oil company. And I will fully confess, I'm afraid. I'm scared. I'm running into this thing, trying to make it work. Yeah. And I've never feared fear, though. It always keeps you on the edge.
Yep. And there's really nothing that teaches you how to be a CEO.
I'm sorry, say again?
And I was saying nothing really ever teaches you how to be a CEO. You may learn all the management principles, but until you're actually doing it, until you have that joy of making payrolls and doing everything else, it's uncharted territory.
You're right. Exactly right. And, as I look back, there are little things that I think any of us can do and probably would have fun doing. So as a young guy, even in Midland, Texas, I got involved with the JCs, and they did something where they put on a basketball tournament. And I, being a kid from North Carolina, growing up watching basketball, here I am out in the remote hinterlands, and there was a little junior college, and I could work with folks and put on a tournament. So I kind of worked my way up in a volunteer organization, and eventually ran that little basketball tournament. And it gave me some experience that helped me learn, as you described. And I've continued to do things like that even outside of the workplace. And all of that, all of our life experiences are integrated into whatever it is we're doing now. And so I'm trying to lead, if you will, in the best way of what I've learned from other leaders before me, and put my own little spin on it. But yeah, nothing really prepares you to do it exactly one way or the other.
Yeah, and you said a couple of things. I'm sorry, go ahead, Susan.
Go ahead. Well, after you finish this track, I want to go into the specifics on how you planned Panther II.
Sure.
So go ahead with that. Well, Rick, what were you going to ask?
Well, mine was just something different. It was something after talking to Bob for about 20 minutes pre-show, and now some of the things he's saying. Yeah, I catch two things from Bob that I think are real good qualities of any leader and not always easy to come by. You mentioned the word gratitude on more than one occasion. To have gratitude for what comes at you is just very special. And the other thing is there's that underlying, and I catch this just when we were talking, just a great humility. No matter how well you've done or what you've done, to have that humility of reaching something that most people don't even dream of, and doing it well and not letting it get to you. That's actually pretty impressive, Don. And so all I can say is kudos to you for that, because that's probably even more important than all the success you have, because it keeps you.
Well, I'll tell you, I know me better than anybody, and so it's pretty easy to be humble. I need to be surrounded by people, and so I am. I'm fortunate. I'm grateful for the team that we have, and it's fun. This little company today, Olifant, we have 15 people. We started with 12, and it is individuals, each of whom has to do their role. I just have one role in this company, the role that I'm playing, but every one of us has to play their role to the best of their ability. Otherwise, the organization fails. So it's great to be partnered with folks that take on this challenge together. We're all cheering for each other. We all know we're going to make mistakes, but if we can pick each other up and help each other cross that finish line, it's just all the more fun. So yeah, gratitude is real. It doesn't happen without the benefit and partnership with others, and I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Susan,
you were asking about Panther?
And I think that this is a really good segue, because what you're doing now, you're describing your environment with 15 people. You can build on the success that you had with Panther II, and that story is pretty amazing, because during the time that you had Panther II, the price of oil went from about $100 to a low of $26, right at the worst possible time in a certain way. And I just wanted to ask, okay, first of all, you and your team obtained private equity capital, and how did that work? And what did you bring to the private equity group? And then what kinds of plans build in accounting for risk? Okay.
Sure. Well, so, and we really do have kind of two stories here, the Panther and the Olifant story, is the last two career positions that I've held, or companies that I've been with. Panther II was led by a couple of gentlemen, Barry Mullinex, as CEO, Roy Grossman, as COO. And as the name implies, there was a Panther I. And so those two gentlemen had built and sold Panther I, and were in the process now of starting a new company. And they were looking for a VP of geology. That's the role that I came in to fulfill at Panther II. And they were going to build a whole new geology team. Before I joined them, I had myself and 5 other individuals who were exploring the idea of doing our own company together. And we decided in this, I call it the Sunday afternoon meeting, where it was time to, kind of put all your chips on the table and decide, are you in or are you out? And our little group of guys, all of whom were gainfully employed, had good careers, good paychecks, all of financial benefits. That group, we had one gentleman who just wasn't ready. And he said, guys, I'm out. And then a second gentleman in the group said, I'm a little more nervous about us going forward and starting a brand new company since the first guy's out, but I'm still in. And then I chimed in and said, I don't think we're ready, because none of us had ever done this before. And I said, this is probably going to be harder than we've anticipated. And if we're already backing off a little bit, maybe we aren't ready to make that full commitment. So we all parted as friends. That little group did not form a company. And the door opened for me to visit with Roy and Barry, who were going to start Panther II. As I said, fork in the road, take a scary path. Sitting down with Roy is who I spoke with the most, and he said, Don, I need you to build a team of geologists, get us into the right plays, help us deploy capital, and turn X dollars into a multiple. Let's go create some value together. If you can do that, you will be well rewarded. If you don't, you'll be fired. It's pretty simple. It's a performance-based kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So to that end, oh, go ahead. Yeah, I don't want to just run on. So yeah.
Well, I like the part where that, and I know the story that and the history. What I like is the fact that you're looking at the Midland Basin. I think it was in Midland, whether it was the Delaware, but it was in the Permian Basin in Midland, Texas, just where you had actually full circle. And you guys had the idea of extending extending the field. And you had the evidence through well logs, and used science to come up with that. And then I remember that you had 2 other ideas, one in Oklahoma and one in Kansas. So you had those 3 concepts. So you didn't just put all your chips in one. Tell us how that worked out.
Sure. So we get this team together. I kind of, honestly, through AAPG, I'd seen a geologist give a presentation a few years back, and always thought highly of that individual, recruited him to be a part of the Panther team. We went after a Top Gun petrophysicist who had worked in resource plays in the last 4 years, but prior to that had done global geology and global petrophysical work. We built this team that I thought could perform and compete with the best in the business. And so our funding, Panther II, began its funding in September of 2013. And we spent the first 3 months just studying every play we could, every basin, building Petra projects was a software we used, but culling through data and beginning to create ideas, ranking those ideas, and then kind of figuring out what to do. So in the ranking scheme, you look at the fundamental geology that's there, but there's a lot of other variables, and not the least of which includes the economic aspects of these ideas that you're generating. Can you get in? Can you create something of value? And do you have a buyer who might want to buy what you've created after a period of time? That's part of the whole equation. So to that end, then by January, we had about 10 ideas that we thought were pretty good. We ranked those into a top 3. And the Delaware Basin horizontal wolf camp play was one of the top ideas that we'd come up with. And we thought there were opportunities to extend that play meaningfully into areas that we thought would ultimately become core, and at the time were viewed as fringe. So we saw opportunities there. We saw another opportunity in Kansas, still another opportunity in Wyoming, actually a 4th opportunity in Louisiana. So with each of these ideas, we tried to, with a kind of a risk-weighted approach, deploy capital sufficient to test the idea. And the Delaware Basin idea actually worked so well that we began to concentrate, dump as much money as we could into growing the position, drilling the wells. And I think, as you alluded to earlier, despite the fact that we started life at $100 oil, went through $26 a barrel oil, and actually sold after 3.5 years in a $50 a barrel environment, we were able to turn our invested capital of about $150 million into an $863 million exit price. So it worked out pretty well.
That's so inspiring. And so how is Olifant the same or different?
So interesting. After the Panther experience, myself and then the VP of engineering, who recruited an engineering team, we were talking, and we all along had this idea that maybe we would co-head a new company. In our conversations with Roy and Barry, who we great affection for, and as an exit was becoming obvious for Panther II, the question was, do we all stay together and do it again, or do we split off and maybe have 2 companies? Now, at the beginning of the Panther experience, Roy and Barry knew that myself and Bill Martin, who was my co-founder here at Olifant, were interested in stepping up and taking the reins in the next iteration. And Roy and Barry were considering retiring from the business. I think, in my assessment, is we all had so much fun together that Roy and Barry said, you know what, we're not done. Let's do this again. And so they asked, would you guys want to stay? And we said, well, guys, we were thinking now about spinning off, but honestly, don't want to do it in an acrimonious way. I want your blessing. I actually sat down with each of those guys and said, if we split, are you supportive? Let's talk about that. And to Roy and Barry's credit, and they both said, we thought that would be your answer. And so we've already talked about it amongst ourselves. We do support you. In fact, if you need startup investors, we'd be willing to put capital behind you. So I couldn't have asked for a better relationship with those guys and a better parting of the ways. So once that was established, we went to the technical team. So the geo team that I recruited, the engineering team that Bill recruited, and sort of said, hey guys, your opportunity is either to stay with Panther, to go with us. It's really your choice. and what would you like? Well, fortunately, those entire teams did want to come with us. So that was the nucleus. We are a nucleus of 8 folks who had all worked together at Panther. And, I will tell you then, from the day of the press release announcing our sale to the 2 buyers, that afternoon, I start calling private equity folks, people that I knew, and teasing out, saying, look, we've got a team. We're experienced, we're together, and is there interest? Because I'll give you this backstory. I've done and continue to do a lot of business development work in my career, and so I was well aware that there were teams of talented people who were looking to find private equity funding, and they weren't getting it. So, and these were people I admire, and I think could do very well in this business. So as we got our team together, I told the guys, this may not work. So if you're willing to go with us, give us a few months to try. But if I fail in my part to raise the money, then I am not going to hold you to stay with us, because some of those guys are going to need to find employment somewhere, and I may not be able to deliver that. But so started making the calls. I felt the pressure to raise the money, to sell the team, to sell the concept. And fortunately, we did have a good story. We could point to a track record of creating value, and the private equity firms recognized that. And by June, we had funding. We had a great private equity firm that was frankly at the top of our list to partner with. They agreed to partner with us. The funding came to us in June of last year, and this little team started trying to do its thing and went off to the races.
And one thing you're saying is, with private equity firms, if you watch TV, then you see all these little people, doing ideas, and of course they put money together, but it's really more of a carnival atmosphere. Private equity is really all about trust. Can they trust you? Do you have what it takes? And can you make money out of it? Because they don't want to just invest for the heck of investing. They want to make sure that it'll grow. And that really is a function of trust. More like you said, people you knew, they trusted you. The track record speaks for itself at that point. And that's a great thing. And a lot of people are afraid of asking for the money. That's another problem that you find in most businesses. People are afraid of success, if you will. They're afraid of taking that extra slight leap into that jump into the abyss where, what if, where's my net? There is no net.
There is none. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And it's trust and relationships. And I think it's true to say that many of the relationships within the private equity world that ultimately led to our funding were initially nurtured and developed far before I was going to them asking for money.
Yeah.
I was, and this, I hope, what I want to say now, I hope is inspirational for someone maybe who's watching this and feels intimidated and scared by the whole concept of starting a business or going to private equity. Let me think timing wise. Yeah. 7 years ago, not that long in terms of my personal career, I sat down across the table from a gentleman who was in a private equity firm, and I said, I don't understand how this works. Take me to private equity 101. What's a waterfall? What are points exactly? How do you fund teams? And I just fully confessed my ignorance and said, take me to, funding 101, and let's begin this conversation. And I proceeded to do that with a number of guys as I would meet them, and just, said, help me learn. And over time, I learned, and I got comfortable, and I got confident.
Yep. And they were probably happy you asked, because a lot of people don't ask. They just sit there. What do we do? I need this. Yeah. I need that. I need that. And they start panicking. And because then they become accountants. Now they forgot what it is to run a business. Now they're thinking like accountants. That's scary. You don't find a lot of accountants running business if you think about it.
Yeah, they may be. If accountants running the business, you're probably on your last legs.
That's so true.
That's so true.
Well, Susan, we're about out of time. You have a special question for Don?
I do. Okay, this is the question we always ask people, and that is, Don, what do you think it is in life that has given you an edge?
giving me the edge. Yeah, okay, and I think we've touched on it. I am genuinely grateful for so much, for the people, for the opportunities. I don't take anything for granted. And when little things that are wonderful happen or big things, I'm just thankful for it. I'll reiterate, I do know myself. You know, I'm pretty freaking average, and that's okay. And I almost, and a side thing is I embrace the fact that I'm goofy, a little, you know, maybe insecure on some things, but also secure enough to admit my weaknesses and failings. And I think that gives me an edge, and to flip it around. It means I don't have to pretend to be something I'm not. And that's a good place to be.
And that's a really good point, because a lot of people don't have mirrors, and they have no idea who they are, what they can do, and it's usually not real pretty. In the long run, it's pretty sort of scary. So, well, Don, this has been a real pleasure. Really enjoyed meeting with you and having this conversation. And if you're in the audience and you're listening, there's a lot of wisdom that just got spoken. So pay attention. That's all I can say.
A lot of fun, guys. Really enjoyed this. This is a great conversation.
Oh, well, thank you again, and I just learn something more every time I hear you speak, and I'm just appreciative, and I know our audience is going to love this interview. So thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it, Don. Thank you much for showing up and being here and sharing with us. And if you're watching the show, please subscribe and give us your feedback, and we'll have a way to get a hold of Don if you're interested in the show notes. So thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye, Don. Thanks. Bye, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.